In the meantime, the Nigerian Army has established a new school to tackle the issue of insecurity and territorial warfare in cyberspace. The Nigerian Army Cyber Warfare School was established in Abuja along with the inauguration of a digital literacy, internet and core computing certification course and the basic cyber laboratory for the Nigerian Army Cyber Warfare Command. At the inauguration, Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Farouk Yahaya said that modern battles are not limited to land, air and maritime because warfare and now affects cyberspace. Well, he says this development has brought to the fore the need to properly defend the territory integrity of the nation in cyberspace. And to discuss these issues, we're now being joined by Mbasekei Martin Obono. He's a human rights lawyer as well as the Executive Director of Advocacy Group. That's a TAP initiative. He's the Executive Director of that group. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start first of all with the fact that we've now budgeted 104 million naira. That's for the budget estimate as presented by Mr. President at the National Assembly to fight hate speech. Let's have this conversation. First of all, let's define hate speech and why it is a priority of the government at this time.
First of all, I think in terms of defining hate speech from the original definition and for the people who actually started propagating hate speech, the whole concept of hate speech is meant to be a kind of speech with criminal intent that is supposed to be targeted at either a group of people. It could be race, racial discrimination. It could be sexual minority rights discrimination against the sexual minority rights or minority groups. It could be against your a particular religious or sect. Now, understand the fact that it's criminal intent. So you're either making a particular speech or a statement to make a particular group of people be hated upon. And so hate speech in itself is targeted at a class or a group of people. So when you're fighting racism, anything that is said about a particular race, whether black or Caucasian, that is meant to lower their credibility or make them look horrible or be hated is actually hate speech. But in our climes, if you look at our own climes, it's totally the opposite. What you see is that government in itself begins to take messages, criticism, expressions, opinions of the people and personalize them to become hate speech. So if you say, for example, let's say Buhari is a bad boy, it becomes hateful. So they say you've just made a hate speech, and that automatically classifies you as somebody who has incited people against the president. But now that is not a group of people; that's an individual. So it's one person. So it doesn't qualify as hate speech in the real sense of it. So hate speech is meant to be targeted at a group of people. So for example, if you say Calabar people eat dogs, and so that means they don't have sympathy for pets, that automatically means that you've made a certain kind of speech which will make them be hated.
I understand what you're trying to do here, trying to make us understand the whole idea behind hate speech in the first place. But do you think Nigeria has a hate speech problem? Or is this the government overreacting to things? So
with a kind of environment and composition, so you have Christians, you have Muslims, you have Yorubas, you have different ethnic groups. It is bound to happen that people would make speeches that will definitely lower or make people hate on other class of people. So there is hate speech in Nigeria. So Mieti Allah is saying things about the Igbos, or the Igbos are saying things about the Hausa people or the Fulani people. Just the same way you hear Fulani headsmen or killer Fulani headsmen. you know, that is hate speech in its own sense. You know, when you describe every
I understand
Fulani
what
person.
you're saying, but I need you to go be direct
So
because we don't have all the time. Because I'm asking you, do we have a hate speech problem?
So we do.
I'm not saying
Yes,
we don't have hate speech.
We do have hate speech problem. We do have hate speech problem. That's what I was trying to like break down. But the problem, the way the government is interpreting hate speech is not the way, that's not what hate speech is. Because what government is basically trying to do is to ensure that they criminalize expression and opinion, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion. And our constitution in section 39 actually guarantees all these freedoms. So today you get to hear that don't tweet certain things because we are watching you. So a case in point is how much government is budgeting for cyber command. You know, the SSS has its own, the Nigerian police has its own, the Nigerian army today has its own. So why are they putting so much on this in terms of trying to target media, journalists, civil society activists, and human rights defenders? Because in the real sense, you don't see the normal person on the streets being arrested for hate speech. You see people who are in the media, those who are supposed to hold government accountable, political activists or politicians are the ones who usually have suffer reprisal in terms of what government classifies as hate speech.
So where do we now draw the line between hate speech really and the freedom of expression?
Criminal intent. So whenever somebody makes an expression, it is bound to be looked into to find out what the real intention of this person was as at the time he made that statement. All right. So the fact that you're intolerable or you are pushing illiberalism doesn't necessarily mean that whatever someone has said could be hateful. But the fact that the person's expression is looked into and then you begin to see whether the person really intended to cause criminal harm. So the difference between hate speech and freedom of expression is criminal intent. So what I have said, am I trying to say it such a way that people are incited to hate you? That's the big question. And it is not the government that has the rule, the government as per the executive that has the role to determine that. It is the judiciary.
Exactly. That was going to be my next question.
So if you feel offended by my expression, right, you go to court. It's not like Mohammed's responsibility, it's not the Chief of Army Staff's responsibility, it's not the DG of SSS responsibility to determine whether what I have said is hateful or not. It is the court that has the responsibility to determine that. So when you look at all these cases, you begin to see why people are very skeptical about government's whole cry for hate speech and the fact that they want to curb expressions and all that. Because in the real sense, you see a lot of laws that have been passed in recent times or that have been proposed. The hate speech, social media bill, the control for infectious disease control bill, the NGO bill, even the KAMA, all these laws and all these proposals are actually geared towards cutting down freedom of expressions of people, of the citizens, and that is very, very wrong.
Good place to leave the conversation, but of course some would still argue and tell you that, of course, for them spending so much money, the fight right now against insecurity. We have to wrap up this conversation. It's gone beyond the boots on the ground. We have to do more. But I would have to say thank you so much for joining me tonight, and of course for your in-depth analysis on fake news and as well as hate speech. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.